All right, I'm going to continue on with Chapter 19. We're going to get done with most of it today. The only thing I didn't get to was creating the master details, so I'm going to try to do that tonight. I'm going to go back through and reread chapters 20 through the rest of the book basically over the weekend and just see what I think we should be covering. All right, because we've got, after tomorrow, we've got 10 days. I have promised you that at a minimum, I'm going to give you 2 days, all right, that you can work on your final project, your electronic portfolio, and that'll be at a minimum. What I've decided to do, because last year we had a situation where people either weren't turning them in or they were turning them in, but they were very incomplete. So what I'm going to do is tomorrow we'll probably spend a little bit of time looking again at that Parameterized and talking about different ways you can do this. But I'm going to ask that you turn in 2 versions of this. I'm going to ask that you turn in 1 version of your portfolio. It'll be worth like 50 points a week from tomorrow. And then the other one will be due at the end of the semester. All right. Okay. So going on, they talk in here about using a parameterized query. And again, I think it's much easier, as I've been kind of doing here, rather than, whoops, I've got some of their examples up too. So rather than talking about it first, I wanted to demonstrate it to you first. Hopefully that'll make a little bit more sense. So I'm going to go and grab one of these forms, and when I do these, let's see. I don't want to do anything with the state because somehow that is screwed up, but the rest of them work okay. So, for instance, okay, if you look right here, here's the product vendors table. All right. And it's got a product ID and it's got a vendor ID. And then there's a product vendor wholesale price and a product vendor days to deliver. To create one of these things, it's pretty simple to do. All right. And what I mean is, well, the product vendors table, I think, has got a concatenated primary key. It's both of these fields right here. I haven't tried this one, so this will be interesting to see if it works. If I click on here, you'll notice that this is locked. Everybody see this? Since it's locked, I want to unlock it by clicking the lock controls again, and that brings up the smart tag right here. If I click on the smart tag, and then I click on add query, basically it shows me right now what I'm able to do. Okay, I'm going to take this and really space it out quite a bit. And I'm actually going to go and take and put virtually everything on its own line. I realize it might be kind of tough for you to see, especially in the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this and I'm going to make a copy of what's in here, and I'm going to just throw it into into some kind of a text editor. So what you get off, out of the box, so to speak, is this right here. Now that's, I'm sure, much easier for you to see. So what they're saying here is basically show me everything there is in the product vendors table. Does that make sense? I mean, that's all it is. All right. Well, that's all fine and dandy. Now you'll notice that it's got DBO, which is the preface for a lot of this stuff, but it's telling you the name, all right, of the table that you're getting it from. So what I want to do is I want to come in here and I want to add information to this. In other words, I'm going to add something right here. And I'm going to show you what happens. I got my choice. I can either add it directly right here, which is what I'm going to do. All right, you're going to see it in just a minute. Or I can click on the query builder and I can add it in there. I don't particularly like the query builder. There's nothing wrong with it. I just don't use it very often. So I'm going to come in here, and again, this should work, but if it doesn't, well, you'll know it when I know. I'm going to say where, and we're going to say here, let's see, product ID equals @ product ID. In fact, I'm going to put in 2 parentheses here. And when I get done, I'll go and copy this in just like I did before, so you can all see it. And vendor ID equals @vendor ID. Now, do I expect this to totally make sense? No. But let me just grab this stuff at the bottom here, and I'm going to bring it into here. This is what is referred to then as a parameterized query. What this is going to do in just a minute, if it works, if it doesn't work, then I'll try a different table. But I haven't tried one with multiple keys on it. But what it's going to do is it's going to bring up for me another one of those toolbar tabs. And it's going to basically say in there, well, what do you want to do? As far as I just want to show one record. Literally, that's all I'm going to want to do. So I'm saying to show the record basically when my keys match. And that's all I'm saying in here. All right. So when I come in here, first of all, notice it gives it a really bad name. It calls it fill by. Okay. So I'm going to say fill by product ID and vendor ID. Okay, that's just the name I gave it. You can call it anything you want, but to me that makes some sense. So I've got that in there as the query name. You already saw the query because I just showed it to you. So I'm going to click OK. Now, when I click OK, please look on the screen and notice what happens here, right here. All right. It added a second in here. See that? It added a second toolbar right there. Okay? And you can see it's got the names, it's got everything in it. So I'm going to run this, and I was playing around with the other one, so I've got to reset my startup project. But this is the product vendors table. I've already got it set up for a couple of these, but I just wanted to show it to you. So product vendors. And notice there's product ID 1 and vendor 4. I'm just going to grab one of these that's kind of arbitrary, so I'll go a little ways in. So 8 and 8. Everybody see that? So I'm going to come in here and try 8 and 8. And I want to see if that'll work like this. So for product ID, I'm going to put in 8. For vendor ID, I'm going to put in 8. And when I click this, you see what I got? All right. Now, this could be made a lot better. I wish I had more time to work on this. I wish I was better at this. But the idea is, especially when you've got a fairly small result set that you want, this allows you to bring up any one record. Now, who cares? Well, I just want you to realize when you look up here, this says 1 of 1. See that? So by default, it is only showing me a single record. Not only that, when I go through this, and I didn't do it, but I can come in here and I can set it up. I can modify the toolbar. I'm going to show you that in just a minute. But if I modify the toolbar, I can remove this and or this and or this. So I can customize the toolbar that comes up with it, with this, any way I want to customize it. And that might not sound like much, but it can be kind of a lifesaver for lack of better words. All right. So let me stop this. And I want to show you one of the other ones that I added earlier because it's pretty much done the same way. So let's see. Did I add one to vendors? No, I didn't. Okay. So here's one for order. All right, from the orders table. Okay, so you'll notice the order ID in here. There's 937 orders. Well, if I'm pretty sure that the order I want to see is 916, I can put that in there, and there I am. Now, again, that's not a gee whiz type of thing, but once you get more adept at using this, you can write your own queries, and rather than just showing a record at a location, all right, if I knew, for example, that I knew I had one record in there, one order that had, let's just say I knew it, that it had an order ID of 916, a customer ID of 1025, an employee, etc. I can drill down as much as I need to. not only can I use equality operators, but I can use greater than operators. So I could use an aggregate operators. Remember, when we talked about like using that max operator and the min, we did that in MySQL. You can use that stuff in here too. So we could come in here and search for the order that we had that basically, I don't know, if I went in the order details, who ordered the products with the most money? Who had the biggest order type of thing. So that's, in a lot of ways, that's how this stuff can be used. All right. So again, I want you to see something, because it doesn't always work the way you would think it would. Because I'm going to go back to my customers table. I put one of these in my customers. All right. And I played around with this one a lot. Okay, and I made changes to it, etc. But since this field right here is being based off of another table, when I come in here and I do my customer ID and I want to fill it, so let's just say, I don't know, customer 4. All right, or I'm sorry, 1004. 1004. All right, and I click. Okay, well, it came up. Didn't come up before, probably because I put a 4 in there, not a 1004. But I can still come in and do that, and still come in and change all this, etc. All right. And I put one also in the employees. I just want to show you some of this stuff. That's all. So literally, you should be able to come in. I thought I put one in place. Let's put one in right now, just so you can see it. All right. So I can go through the whole rigmarole, the whole process with you. All right. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to bring up my FRM employees design. One thing I had to do, it's not a big thing, but just so you know it, I had to move the headings down, because once you put in a second toolbar, it was covering up part of the heading and it looked really bad. All right. So I can come up to any of these fields that's in here. It doesn't matter. So I just pick the first one. I unlock it. Okay. And then I click on the smart tag and I click on add query. That's all I got to do. All right, and it comes up with this. Again, this is very similar to what you saw before, so what I'll do is I'll grab all of it. I'll throw it in so you can see it in the back there. All right, and then I'll break it down into individual lines. So select the employee ID, the employee first name, last name, address, city, state, zip, area code, phone number from employees. Now you should know, all of you in here should know from looking at this, because we've done this before. This is the query to show every single employee. I think there were like 27 employees. So that's the one that we have on our main toolbar. So that will show one, it'll bring up employee 1 and it'll be 1 through 27. All right. So that's fine. But when I want to go in and be able to just bring up one of those employees, then I can come in and say where, and you put it in parentheses, and the key field is the employee ID, and you say that's equal to @ employee ID. That @, that is the value that you put into that little box that comes up. All right. So I'm going to grab all this, copy it to the clipboard. I'm going to throw it in here. So I'm going to replace what was there with this. And I'm going to call this fill by employee ID. All right. And click OK. All right. Nothing magical happened right there. I should come back here and relock this. You don't have to. But I'm going to come back and relock it. All right. Now I run the program. And I go to the employees table. All right, my first employee is number 701. So if I come in here and I say there's 27 employees, so let's ask for employee 730. Right there, click. And that's what happened to me before. It didn't like this. So I'm going to show you what I changed. I'm going to see if I can fix this right now. All right, because I fixed the other one evidently, not even knowing I did, but I did. So I'm going to unlock this, and I'm going to bring up, I'm going to unlock this, and bring up, come on, oh, the program's still running, that's why. So I'm going to unlock this, bring up the smart tag, and see where this says binding source, it's got state abbreviation. All right. Well, I'm going to go look quickly. I'm going to go look at the other one. In other words, I'm going to bring up the one for customers, which worked. And I want to see what that smart tag right there says. So that says state abbreviation, customers. Looks to me like it's the same thing. All right. State abbreviation. Of course, it would be employees because it's the employees table and not the customers. All right. So we put that in. We've got this in here. It is set up. All right. Well, I'll tell you what I'm going to do first is I'm going to do a save all just to make sure everything's been saved. But this one I couldn't get to work before. So when I did come in here, this is 701. Let's just try 702. All right. And it came up with, well, now it worked. I'm not sure what I did to make it work. All right. But now I can come in and search for an individual employee, or I can bring up all employees. I can search for an individual customer or bring up all customers. I can search for an individual order or bring up all orders. I didn't set one up for order details, although I could. All right, I did set one up for categories. So if I say category ID, let's just say 4. All right, you notice I get 4 components. All right, products. I didn't put one in for products, but again, we could. All right, product vendors. I just showed you that one. All right, and vendors. I didn't put one in there either. But hopefully you see that and you see how fairly simplistic it is to do that. Again, it would be more work if you wanted to, this is designed to show a single result in the result set, but it can show more. In other words, coming back to this one, try that one. If I could have written a query that asked for all categories greater than 3, for whatever reason, let's just say I wanted to do that, then it should return 3 categories, right? 4, 5, and 6. So you can do that, and you can be as, I don't know, as granular as you want to be with this, okay? Now, when this stuff all comes up, so let me stop the run, and I'm just going to, doesn't matter which one of these I grab, but I'll grab this one right here. This is just an object, just like a button is an object, just like a text box is an object, but if I click on the toolbar, you see it gets its own smart tag up over here. So I can click on that, and I can go down to edit items, and I can do different things in here as far as changing colors. I can add things to here. I can remove things from here, etc. Now, I didn't do anything in here. I didn't feel like doing anything in here, but it would have been totally possible and totally plausible to put something else in there if indeed we wanted to do something like that. So that's the parameterized queries. But I do want to show you on the parameterized queries, because they show you this in the book, and I think they did a good job of explaining it. You may or may not agree, but I'm going to come in here for, we can grab the employees, that should be fine, and I'm going to show the code. All right. This is the code that got added from me putting that in. All right. This under the, right there. And you might say, big deal. It is kind of a big deal because they do a lot of stuff here you don't have to do. In other words, notice what they do here. They're in that line of code, what they're doing is they're basically saying, we want to convert that primary key field, employee ID, which remember is an integer in the database, but since it's showing on a form, it's automatically characters. It's a string. So they're talking in there about how you can convert it. It's totally fine. And it works. You saw that it worked. But they show you in the book, and I'll mention it in just a second, that rather than do it like that, There's easier ways of writing it. Not only that, it automatically puts all this in here. We could remove this. That's redundant. We're already including with a using statement system.windows.forms, but it puts that in anyway. Not sure why it does. It's just something that's built into the tool. All right. But they do mention then in the book, and that's what I wanted to say to you here. So we talked parameterized queries. All right. And this, how to use code to work with a parameterized query. So what I'm trying to show you, if you look on the screen right here, make this a little smaller, is this code that's up here and this code that's down here is the same code. But what they've done in the bottom case here is they've done some refactoring to try to make it be a little, or optimizing, whatever you want to call it, to make it run a little better, to make it a little easier for a person to look at. So notice now they've got int customer ID equals convert.toInt32. You know how to do that because we've done plenty of those. And then when you use it in here, now you can just say customer ID. The point of going through this and telling this to you is not to waste my time, not to waste your time, but to let you know it is code that is generated by the system. That said, you can go into that code and modify it if you want to. So we could modify the whole, the whole query if we wanted to indeed do that. We could add more things, remove more things, etc. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention to you is when you look at this, let's see. And, whoop, wrong one. And if I bring up, it doesn't matter again which one. We're working with the employees, so let's just take a look at the employees here. I don't have to select all those fields. So maybe all I want for customer employee ID 1 is just their name. So I can just include that one in the query. You saw where I included all those fields. When I made the copy here, I didn't have to include all those. So if all I care about is the employee's, let's say, ID and first name, I could have changed the query to look like this, and it would have worked fine. Those other fields would have all been blank, but who cares? If all I care about is their ID and their name, this might be a lot easier query. All right. One thing to watch out for when you write a lot of queries, believe it or not, I've shown you this already, but this, true or false, this query right here, this, that is the same thing as saying isn't it? Because that's every field. Now, in this example, in the application that we're working on, we are showing every field in every table, all right, in the whole application. You may not want to do that in your own application. I've already mentioned to you that there may not be a good reason that you want to show IDs. I put them in there, and every ID now that's in here is in as a label. But we could suppress or just keep those IDs from showing. Maybe there's other information we don't want to show. All right, it's not impossible that you could have something that might be proprietary or something like that. Now, passwords and that, you're never going to show that. I mean, be honest here. But even things like, IDs, maybe you don't want to give out customer addresses. You want to give out their names and maybe their phone numbers, but we don't even want people to know where they're located for whatever reason. And there may be a very valid reason for something like that. All right. So again, they do a pretty good job, I think, in the book of going through this and then showing you how you can optimize the code that comes in. Not only that, you may or may not have noticed this. Go back to the code for just a second here. Okay, so again, when all this stuff that's in here under to-dos, you don't have to keep those comments in there if you don't want to. All right, and I was playing around with this stuff this morning. I was commenting stuff out and then uncommenting it, etc. Some of the code, it still works fine. Now, of course, if I've got a line in here, if this is the line that's filling up all 27 employees, or all whatever it is, 27 customers, or all 8 employees, whatever it is, and if I comment that line out and I run the query, it's not going to work, but it's not going to break anything either, is what I wanted to show you. All right. So again, when you work with this tool strip, I already showed you how to bring this up. It's called the Items Collection Editor. And there's different things that you can do with it. Give me an example. Okay. For right now, when the button comes up, believe it or not, you may or may not have thought about this, noticed this, or whatever, but when we bring this up, let me bring that up again. All right. It brings this up. This right here is a text box, of course. That's a button. It may or may not look like one, but it's a button. And if you don't want it to say fill by employee ID, you can literally change it so that rather than having it have text, you can put an image in there if there was a reason to do that. All right. For example, like if I wanted to just set something special up for a delete, maybe I wanted it to have that X that you show right there. That's right up above it as an example. So they show you in here some of the stuff that you can change. All right. Change, add, modify, etc. Now, since it's just another object, when you click on it, it brings up a code window. Just like when you click on a button, it brings up a code window. Just like when you click on a text box, etc., it brings up a code window. So it says you can code your own event handler for a tool strip item. Now, we've already got this. You may or may not have noticed it, but when I come back here and I bring up my code again, and I go down here, there it is. There's my tool strip. And it responds to a click event. Since it's a button, doesn't that make sense? But again, you can come in here and you can modify this code. Notice it's in a try-catch block, all right? Because if for some reason you've really balled it up and the system doesn't know what it is you're trying to do, let's just say you come in here and you say, I want to rewrite this the way they did it in the book. And you do rewrite it. But when you do, instead of writing employee ID like that, you put 3 E's at the end of employee instead of 2, something along those lines. It's going to throw a system exception. All right. What you find, more and more as you go on, that virtually everything that you're going to do writing in a program that could have ramifications on a company will either be in a try-catch, or you will have some kind of if statement or statements in there. All right. If it is non-recoverable, so if somebody puts in something that's so egregious that you don't want to go on, it'll typically be in a try-catch. And in the catch, you'll cause the program to stop running. If it's something where they left a field empty where they shouldn't have, it's typically easier to write it with something like an if statement where you check it right away. And if it's not there, you either give them a message box or you don't, but then you just send them right back again. All right. But this becomes really important when you're working with database fields, because again, if I'm putting in a price in my, into my table and I put hello in there or I leave it blank, I want to make sure, because that's an easy way to bring a database down. All right. Well, how could I fix that? Well, one way, if you remember when we went through that, what did we call that? That data entry project, and we set it up so a field would only hold the backspace key, and it would only hold the numbers 0 through 9. You could do that, but you could also include a decimal place or a decimal point. If you do that, be real cognizant of the fact you better check and make sure there's either 0 or 1 decimal place, or point rather. You don't want to be able to put 3.14.14, for example, because it's just going to break when you try to put it into the system. All right. So then they've got this enhanced customer maintenance application. Probably, in hindsight, I probably should have done a better job of going through what they show in the book, because this is their example and it's very similar to what we just did. All right, the code, etc., is very similar. Okay, so with this one, not only that, if you bring it up, it automatically brings the database and everything in for you. All right, so this was the customer maintenance application. I've got it up here in one of these. There it is. So again, you can see how fairly simplistic this is. And you can see in here when I run this, again, okay, so if I come in here and I choose get all customers, what does it show me? It shows me there's 696 customers. But if I only want customer 312 and I put that in, and I screwed up, 312, and I type get customer, that's all it gives me, and it says 1 of 1. All right. So I'm sure that what I've shown you could be optimized, customized in a better way than I've done it. All right. I just try to basically follow along with what they put in the book so you could see it. That's all. All right. Then next, they go through and they talk about how to work with a data grid view control. This one is, again, for lack of better words, I know I've used this before, hinky. It's not as obvious as you might think it is when you're working on this stuff. Now, one of the things that I've done already, and I'm going to do another one to show you in a second, is, there it is. I'm going to go back, and now, because my data grid views are in the first iteration of the project, I'm going to go to my data designer demo and set that as the startup. All right, and I'm going to run this, and I'm going to immediately go to my products table. And you may or may not be able to see this from and back, but I now have a $sign because these have now been formatted, and they've been formatted as currency field with 2 decimal places. So I want to show you how to do that, and I will use, I think, the order details field. Yeah, that's got one, and you can see that one's not done. So let's do that one right now so you can see how it's done. All right, so I'm going to stop the run. I'm going to go to my FRM order details. It's right here. All right. And what I have to do is I have to click on the data grid view itself. The problem again is the data grid view is locked. Once it's locked, I can't get a smart tag. So I have to unlock it. And then when I click on it, there's the smart tag. If I click on it there and I go down to edit columns, which is what I want to do here. All right, edit columns. Well, what column? I want the order detail quoted price. Make sense? The one that I want to change. All right. Now I've got to start looking through here. And if I look at the first one, right here, if I look under default cell style, and I click right here, it shows this. Oh, that makes a lot of sense. All right. But what it has here is the magical thing here that says format. See that? And now if I click on format and I click on the ellipsis, I can say I want it to be currency with automatically 2 decimal places. All right. So I click OK, OK, OK. Always a good idea to do a save all. Run it again. Now when I go back to the order details table, again, hopefully you can see that it's now in currency format. All right, and I think I've said this to you already, but right now it's automatically done by order ID, and when they're ties, it's by order ID and product ID. Everybody see that? But if I click on order ID and I click again, see what it does? Now it's in ascending order. Clicking on it again, it's in descending order. And I can do this on any of these, which is kind of neat because I can see now that my highest product was $1,800. All right. And I'm not changing the data. I'm just changing my view of the data. So I can always come back and click on this again, and now it should be back in the same order it was originally. You can suppress that if you want to. You can turn that off. And there may be a good reason to turn it off. There may be a good reason to turn it on, but only for one of the fields. I mean, for example, right here, total order detail quantity. Do I really care who ordered 1 as opposed to who ordered 6? I may not. All right, so again, this is all stuff that if I want to, I can come in here and change. All right, okay. So this is the example that they give, but they make it sound like it's much simpler. They don't go through that step, all the steps that I just went through with you. All right, and you can edit any column or any columns you want to edit. This is a place where you can come in. All right, for instance, we could come in here and say that if for some reason the product didn't have a price, I could make it appear as 000 and make it red or something like that. Okay. And it says here, these are some of the things that you would change most often. The header text, well, if you've got 2 fields, maybe with order ID, you want it to say order space ID. So you could go in, because all you're changing there is the way it's appearing in the heading on the grid view itself. You're not changing, other than that, you're not changing any of the actual information. The one I showed you was the default cell style. You probably already knew this, but if for some reason, just in case you didn't, if you come in here and let's bring up, let's bring up order details. I can always drag on any of these fields here and make them bigger. All right. Now, when I did this, I used a very much a default size for all of mine. So now it's taking up everything. And you might say, yeah, it does, but it looks really ugly. The point is, I wanted it to take up a certain amount. So if I wanted to break it out, I could do that. All right. You never know. You may have a table that's got basically a lot of text in it, and some of that text may be long. You say that wouldn't happen. Well, what about this? We don't have any product descriptions in our table, but what if we decided to put some in? All right. Technically, the way this is running right now, since these are all empty, see that? That's all of our products, all 40. We probably wouldn't have even needed to put in these 2 fields. All right, we could have left it off, which would have made it easier, but this one right here, that's where I wanted to, and I'm still thinking of trying to be able to implement the actual images in there. All right. So they go through the example and they use the one that they've done. Now, the only thing I didn't have a chance to do, so we're towards the end of the chapter, I'm going to try to do this by tomorrow. I don't know if I will or won't do it. It's got the master detail form. What I'd like to do is set mine up very similar to what they have, but I'd like it to have up here the customer information, and that is basically set up in a non-data grid view. That's just the columns. And then down here, have a data grid view and set something like that up. Now, doing that, notice what they've done here. They've removed some stuff from the customer. All right, if it's the customer ID, the name, the address, the city, state, zip, you probably don't need things like their phone number. All right, and there might be other information too. And for the customer, I don't know if they actually concatenated those 2 fields together, the first name and the last name, or it was just one field. But again, you can put in just the information that you want to put in here. All right, but it's involving using 2 different tables on the same form. But why shouldn't you be able to do that? All right, so this would be the master. So as I iterate my way through here and I change the customer, the appropriate thing would change down here. Now, I do have theirs up, and this could actually be pretty important. What do I mean? Well, notice in here, customer ID. I'm going to put in customer 1. All right, get customer. There's nothing that shows. All right, I'm going to run it again, and I'm going to put in customer 4, and I'm going to say get customer, and it still doesn't show. How about 23? All right, you can see I've got these customers, but as of right now, they don't have any sales. They're not buying anything. Well, I might want to be able to come in here and figure out in here, maybe I want to make another one of these where I can just show all of the customers that do not have orders. Why? Maybe I want to contact them and ask them why they're not ordering, type of an idea. All right, let's see. No customer found with this ID. All right. There is one. Not much, but you can see it. So there is one person, there's the invoice, there's the products, etc. So they do show in here, in the example that's in the book, how you would build out something like this. So this starts on 6/26 and it goes all the way for about, not real long, about the next 5 or 6 pages. That's what we've got left to do in the chapter. So that's what I'm hoping to try to do for class tomorrow. All right. So that'll be probably a very short lecture. All right. So that should give us time tomorrow that I'll be able to go through and try to run through, because I did a very poor job of going through and talking to you about that Parameterized product. I will ask that if you think you're going to create, especially for you two, if you think that you're going to create your electronic portfolio and use something like that, it doesn't have to be Parameterized. There's other products. Parameterized is free and it's drag and drop, which is why I suggested it. All right. But there are some videos on here, and the one that I suggested, and I'm going to go back, there were 2 of them in here. I'm just going to type in Parameterized 2021. And you'll notice there's this one from 2 months ago, and there's another one from 2 months ago. All right. One is 13 minutes, and one is like 12 minutes. Now, this one I didn't even see before, and this one is like 52, I think it said, minutes. Why? 3 weeks ago. I have no idea if this is good or bad. I'm going to go back, and at a minimum, I'm going to watch these 2. Now I notice, just looking here, here's another one, but it's on how to download it. All right. So make an article page, etc. They've got some examples in here. I don't know if they have anything like build a portfolio website with Parameterized. Okay, that's 38 minutes. That might be a really good one to start with. All right. But again, what I'm going to ask, I've already mentioned this. What did we do last week, if you remember? Okay, we built 2 or 3 iterations of that database product. Remember, we did it first where we used just text boxes. Then we did it again where we used the data grid view, and there was another program in there also. I am expecting that by tomorrow, you will have that downloaded, all right, and put into your GitHub account. Everybody hear that? All right, and you had plenty of time. We did them basically as a class, but that is the homework for Chapter 18. I'm asking for Chapter 19 that you at least give an effort to try to do what I've been showing you in here. You might not have all of that implemented, but I'd like you to at least try. And each one of those homework assignments are going to be worth whatever homework assignments are typically worth, 25 points or whatever. All right, so you've got time today to work on as much of that as you want to or need to, and you will have time tomorrow. Anybody have any questions on anything I went over or what I'm asking you to do? Anybody? All right, that's it then. And I will tell you this, Brian Hafferkamp, I've watched, he had a series about 4 years ago on this. I watched all 28 videos. He's good. I mean, he knows what the heck he's doing, a lot more than the instructor in this class.